I wanted to say I'm going to be dropping the honorifics. I know that those of you sitting on the council currently did earn them, and I apologize for that. I was raised better, but I'm just going to be sticking to Mr. and Ms. for tonight. And we're still on the topic of transportation, and for this we'll go to Mr. Menzie, Ms. Pepper, and Ms. Silverberg. And now we're going to be talking about hot lanes, the high occupancy toll lanes. Right now the current terminus is Edsel Road, and the question is, would you support a hot lane from Edsel Road to downtown DC on 395? Mr. Menzie.
Talking to people throughout the community, the biggest problem that this city and this region does is add more things to the roads. And that's not the problem. The problem is we have an increasing population. We have increasing infrastructure. We have increasing buildings. And when these things are in place, we need to find realistic solutions to transport people from point A to point B. With the hot lanes, yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I'm sure that it will save people some time. But how much money? How much time? How much money will it cost to save people an extra 5 minutes, every 10 minutes? I was talking to a gentleman today where he spent 2 hours getting to work and 2 hours getting home. Are we really going to spend this amount of money to save him an extra 10 minutes? Real solutions to solve real problems. And that comes from the people, not from the elected officials. Thank you.
Okay. Originally, we were of the impression that the hot lanes was going to end at Edsel, and not just a bit north of Edsel, and now it's getting to be like it's a little south of Duke Street. So I think we're going to have a good bit of problem here. I think that you're going to have the weaving of folks trying to get onto Duke Street, even with an auxiliary road lane that they might be creating. So I think that that's going to be something of an issue that's really going to take a great deal of our focus to monitor to make sure that we are getting this correctly, because this could be a nightmare for those on Duke Street. I am concerned that as they are moving forward, they are going to be getting off then at Seminary Road, and we have to have some controls there so that this does not become a major issue for those residents.
Well, I live in Park Fairfax, which would be affected directly by the hot lanes, but I'll set that aside for 1 second. Let me be very clear. I am very much against the hot lanes going north up to DC. I think it would be a disaster for not only my community in Park Fairfax, but all the communities along the way have banded together. And I was part of a band of brothers, a team in Park Fairfax that fought hard to stop the hot lanes coming through. In my neighborhood alone, and it wasn't just in Alexandria, but in Arlington too, on both sides of 395, people were against the hot lanes. It would be terrible for those along Seminary and south of there. But in Park Fairfax, it would literally push the freeway, the 395, because of the hot lanes. It would push it straight up to within like 30 or 40 feet of some of my friends' homes that they have invested their life savings into. It would destroy the historic community known as Park Fairfax. So I'm against it also because it doesn't do any good. Once you get to DC, there's nowhere to go. The traffic is the bottleneck in DC. That's what we have to focus on regionally.
Thank you all very much. Okay, so now we are going to turn to the topic of open space, and for that we're going to turn to you, Mr. Chapman, Ms. Davis, and Mr. Fannin. And again, 1 minute each. The question is, do you support the city's open space master plan goal of creating an additional 100 acres of open space in the city? And if so, how would you propose funding this goal?
I do support the open space master plan. I think it's necessary for to continue our standard of living, to make sure that Alexandria remains a beautiful city. We always talk about how dense we're getting. Open space is a way to make sure that we can try to control that. In terms of looking how we fund it, I think the opportunities we have as redevelopment comes along, we need to look at those opportunities to push on developers to make that something that we get as a profit from developers. I don't think it's something we necessarily need to always look to pay for, but we need to make strategic investments on how we're going to do that. I think it's really, we really need to be creative on how we push our developers to do this. I don't think it needs to always come from our pocket.
Yes, well, I do support the open space. One reason is that it makes such a contribution to the neighboring communities, plus it gives the citizens of Alexandria more outlet and park areas and relaxation and recreation, and I support all of those. I know in my neighborhood, we developed our wetland area, and it has made a substantial difference in the overall growth of my community. So I think more space land, open space, is definitely needed, and we should try to promote more of that in Alexandria. And as far as the funding, what I would do with my background, what I would do, I would just look at the budget line item by line item and just see if there was some way to either transfer some funds or find some areas where there is some excessive spending and trying to implement that.
As many of you know, Alexandria is one of the most densely populated cities in the country. We have 140,000 people that live in 15 square miles. 50% of our residents are homeowners, 50% are renters, and half the city population turns over every 6 years. We need open space for our community, and we've been very creative as a city on how we've achieved some of this. Many of you might realize behind the Land Rover on Duke Street, we have 2 new fields that are opening up due to negotiations during the Wilson Bridge project. Also, Jones Point has just reopened, which is a federal park, which is right here in the city, which is a great asset to our community. Doing creative public-private partnerships are another thing that we achieve. And if you look at the Lee Center, we just approved a new field there for handicapped youth that will be used, and we've done it through a public-private partnership where we moved it up in the CIP project and got people donating from the community to make this work. Look at Potomac Yards, 2 new soccer fields in there that we negotiated with the developers on. So creative financing is the way to do it, and partnering with developers and other municipalities.
Thank you all very much. Continuing on the topic of open space, but now getting into that popular topic of Draft 133, I have a question that we're going to pose to Ms. Silverberg, Ms. Pepper, and Mr. Mency. And some of you have already touched on this, and that was the issue where Draft 133 resulted in the loss of 2 acres that had been designated open space for the previously city-approved development plans for the Mark Center. The BRAC advisory group was able to get compensation for that space, but the city, critics say, accepted far less than the land was worth. So the question to you 3, how does the city make sure that this type of transaction doesn't happen again, whether it be on the waterfront, Beauregard Small Area Plan, the BSAP, or any other future development? And, given all the little time that you have, how does the city ensure that the open space promised by developers is the open space that in the end the community gets? That's a lot to tackle. We'll start with you, Mr. Mency.
As I said before, the greatest resource of the city is its people. And when decisions are made on this podium and not there in the people, you have examples like BRAC, you have fights like Waterfront, and you possibly have problems at Potomac Yards. The City Council needs to remove itself from the podium and get amongst the people, have discussions amongst the people, attend civic associations, and give people realistic examples, realistic solutions of what the development will look like. A lot of times, the city just gives the bare minimums. And then once something is built up, they then try to be retroactive to fix the problem, and yet the citizens didn't want it in the first place. We ensure open space by continuing to talk to the community and ask these citizens what they want, and make sure as representatives for the city, we deliver on that promise. Thank you.
Well, when you're dealing with the federal government, as everyone knows, we cannot regulate what they are going to do. And so it was not with a very happy heart that we saw how Brock just eliminated the beautiful trees that the Winkler family had grown and had enhanced advanced and have really put a great deal of energy into. And what they gave us after that was maybe some acreage around the building, very little. And what we are ending up with is $1.5 million, just what was left over funds. And they handed that to us and said, that's it, live with it. So that is not by any means anything we want to duplicate. In the case of the Beauregard site, for example, we have ensured through all of our negotiations that we are going to be getting some 40+ acres of new open space and land.
BRAC is a painful subject for, I think, all Alexandrians. We need to know how it happened so that it doesn't happen again. Number two is that the 6.5 acres of open space, it's my understanding that, we're getting $1.5 million to buy more open space, but really that value of 6.5 acres was really valued by the city, I believe, at $14 million. And I'm just not sure where the differential ended up. The bigger issue also is the tax revenue that we've lost as a city over 20 years. I believe it's $60 million that the city has lost. And of course, the federal government does have big feet, like an elephant walking in the room, but we need to negotiate harder and better so that this doesn't happen again. And we need more transparency, frankly, and so that we can engage more of the community.